Hello, welcome to another interesting mathematics class. My name is Manola Ndiomu, and today I'll be taking you on the topic Probability Part 1 under the theme Everyday Statistics. Now, before we start this lesson, let's take a look at the objectives for this class. So, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss occurrence of chance events in everyday life, and you should be able to perform probability experiments involving coin and die. Now, probability is a branch of mathematics that deals with how random events occur. So, probability is a mathematical way of describing how likely an event will occur. Probability simply means the possibility. Now, let's take a look at a scenario that has to do with probability. Osinachi wants to get married next year. There are two dates that will be convenient for her fiancé and her. One is in July and one is in December. Osinachi doesn't want rain on her big day. And since the probability of rain in July is greater than the probability of rain in December, because July is the season for rain, she chooses the December dates. Now, going on, there are things that are certain to happen. For example, it is certain that the day after Sunday is Monday. There are also things that are impossible. That means they will never happen. For example, it is impossible that the day after Saturday will be Friday. Now, there are things that are not certain, neither are they impossible. So we say they are likely to happen or unlikely to happen. This is where probability comes in. Now, let's go on to learn more about probability. Now, it is important for you to note that probability can be expressed as a fraction, a decimal, or a percentage. It is also important for you to know that probability can never be negative. When we are describing the probability of an event happening, we use the numbers between 0 and 1 on the probability scale. Now, from our probability scale, if an event is impossible, our probability is 0. But if our event is certain, then the probability is 1. Now, if the event is likely or unlikely, then our probability is in between 0 and 1. Now, if there is a 50% chance of our event happening, we say the probability is 1/2 or 0.5. Now, remember that I said probability can be expressed as a fraction, percentage, or decimal. So now, it is important to know that the less likely an event is to occur, the smaller the fraction, percentage, or decimal, while the more likely an event is to occur, the larger the decimal, fraction, or percentage. In addition, the probability of an event not happening is 1 minus the probability of an event happening. Now, recall that I said probability gives a mathematical way for working out how likely an event can occur. So, to calculate the probability of an event happening, we use the formula probability of an event is equal to number of favorable outcomes over number of possible outcomes. Favorable outcomes are the particular outcomes of an event to happen, while possible outcomes are the total number of ways that are possible for the event to happen. Now, let's go on to solve some examples. Example 1. A shop owner has 60 oranges for sale. 8 of them are bad. What is the probability that an orange chosen at random is good? So now, the total number of oranges is 60. Bad oranges is 8. So our good oranges will be 60 minus 8, which is equal to 52. So now, to find the probability that an orange chosen at random is good, we go back to our formula, which is probability of an event is equal to number of favorable outcomes over number of possible outcomes. So, substituting our values into the formula, the probability of getting a good orange is number of favorable outcomes, which is the total number of good oranges, which is 52, all over number of possible outcomes, which is the total number of oranges, which is 60. Simplifying this will give us 13 over 15. So the probability that an orange chosen at random is good is 13 over 15. Note that we divided through by 4 to simplify our solution. Example 2. Zuri throws a die. Work out the probabilities listed below. A. What is the probability that she gets a 5? B. What is the probability that she gets an odd number? C. What is the probability that she gets an 8? D. What is the probability that she gets a number less than 9? And E. What is the probability that she gets a 3 or a 4? So now, before we begin to calculate the probabilities, let's first list the possible outcomes. Now we know that a die has 6 sides. So the possible outcomes will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So our total number of possible outcomes is 6. Now let's go on to solve. A. The probability of getting a 5. The favorable outcome is to get a 5. So that means the number of favorable outcome is 1. So the probability of getting a 5 is equal to the number of favorable outcomes over the number of possible outcomes, which is equal to 1 over 6. Now, you might be wondering how we got our favorable outcome to be 1. If we go back to the list of possible outcomes, you will notice that 5 only appears once. So that means that when we throw a die and we get a 5, we can only get it once. So the number of favorable outcome is 1. B. The probability of getting an odd number. So now the favorable outcome is to get either 1, 3, or 5. So that means the number of favorable outcome is 3. That is because there are 3 odd numbers. So the probability of getting an odd number will be 3 over 6 because 3 is the number of favorable outcomes and 6 is the number of possible outcomes. Now simplifying, we will have 1 over 2. So that means there is a 50% chance of getting an odd number. Next, probability of getting an 8. Now if you go back to the list of possible outcomes, you will see that we listed 1 to 6. There is no 8. So it is impossible to get an 8 when you throw a die. So the probability of getting an 8 is 0. Next up, probability of getting a number less than 9. Now if you go to the list of possible outcomes, you will see we have numbers from 1 to 6. So that means that all the numbers you can get on a die is less than 9. So we are certain that we will get a number less than 9. So this means that the probability of getting a number less than 9 is 1. And finally, for example 2, probability of getting a 3 or a 4. Now the favorable outcome is to get a 3 or 4. Therefore, the number of favorable outcome is 2. So this means that the probability of getting a 3 or a 4 will be equal to 2 over 6. That is number of favorable outcomes over number of possible outcomes. Simplifying, we will get 1 over 3. Example 3. Ayomide tosses a coin twice. What is the probability that he will get a head twice? A coin has 2 sides, head and tail. The possible outcomes for this event are either head and head, or head and tail, or tail and head, or tail and tail. This means our total possible outcome is 4. So the probability of getting a head twice will be number of favorable outcomes over number of possible outcomes. The number of favorable outcomes will be 1 because you can see that head and head appears once. And number of possible outcomes is 4. So the probability of getting a head twice will be 1 over 4. Example 4. The probability of passing an examination is 0.8. What is the probability of failing the examination? Now, if you remember, I said that the probability of an event not happening is 1 minus the probability of an event happening. So the probability of passing an examination is 0.8. That means the probability of failing the examination will be equal to 1 minus 0.8, which is equal to 0.2. So the probability of failing the examination will be 0.2. Having solved those examples, we have come to the end of this lesson. But before we go, let's take a quick look at all that we have learned so far. First, we learned that probability is a mathematical way of describing how likely an event is to occur. We also learned that probability can be expressed as a fraction, percentage, or decimal. Going on, we learned that the less likely an event, the smaller the fraction, and the more likely an event, the larger the fraction. Next, we learned that the probability of an event not happening is 1 minus the probability of an event happening. And finally, we learned that to calculate the probability of an event happening, we use the formula number of favorable outcomes over number of possible outcomes. It's test time. Question 1. The probability that a pen does not write is 0.05. What is the probability that it writes? Option A, 0.50. Option B, 0.05. Option C, 0.95. Or option D, 0.90. The correct answer is option C, 0.95. Now, how did we get 0.95? If you recall, the probability of an event not happening is 1 minus the probability of an event happening. So the probability that a pen does not write is 0.05. So that means the probability that the pen writes will be 1 minus 0.05, which will give us 0.95. Question 2. There are 6 red balls and 9 blue balls in a box. A ball is picked at random. What is the probability that the ball is red or blue? Option A, 1. Option B, 2 over 5. Option C, 3 over 5. Or option D, 0. The correct answer is option A, 1. Now, how do we get that? We are asked to find the probability that the ball is either red or blue. Now, we are certain we will get a red or blue ball because the box contains both red and blue balls. So the probability that the ball is red or blue is 1. Thank you.